Misfortune is an unrecognized game for the original Game Boy. To those that know of it and have played it, it is considered one of the scariest video games ever made. The game revolves around what happens to a little boy who meets a malevolent, strange gothic being. But the being never gives its name, but it is heavily implied that it's the devil. Upon meeting the creature, a dialogue box appears with the text, "I exist within the very fabric of reality. Do you wish to challenge me?" This is followed by a yes or no choice. If the player should choose yes, then the being replies, "Let's begin." I would normally describe this to you very intricately and depictfully, but since this is a very important video and I'm trying to get the word out, I think I'll just display what I recorded myself. The only question this leaves is, why is misfortune hidden? And it's hidden in so many different games. A few rumors have been floating around that this disturbing nature can cause a curse to harm people who lose at it. It was never allowed to be released. Perhaps Nintendo hid it from inside other titles for some reason, but this seems extremely likely due to Nintendo's very strict rules on what is acceptable and what isn't. And it's impossible that they would allow a game like this to be incorporated in their popular titles in secret. Even though it was never made clear on how this game, or why it's here, it is still considered one of the scariest games ever made. Remember that old man on the construction site of Vermilion City? He had a faithful Machop flattening the ground for some mysterious construction project that they had apparently been at for all these years. There's no more to this tale. The story begins in Lavender Town. Lavender Town chapter of Pokemon Red and Blue was short, but left a profound impact on the player. Team Rocket was at it again, stealing the skulls of Cubones in the tower. Local celebrity Mr. Fuji attempted to stop them, but was easily subdued and taken hostage. Hugh, the valiant hero, rescued Mr. Fuji and put an end to Team Rocket's nefarious plot. The story was juvenile, but there seemed to be so much more to it. Perhaps it is the music that played. It sounds quite simply like fear. It lent an ambience and an intensity not present elsewhere in the game. No wonder it is recalled as such vividness as all we grew up playing the game. But isn't it curious that a town so dedicated to preserving the resting place of Pokemon, a mere 3 years later the tower had been replaced with a radio tower? Lavender Town had obviously changed the first time you traveled there in Gold and Silver. Aside from the aesthetic changes, the music flows lighthearted and whimsical, entirely different in mood from the previous generation. But beneath the cheerful arrangement of the music was the same haunting melody. Things were not simply as they appeared. You see, there was more to Team Rocket's involvement than you had imagined. Lavender Town, during the time of Red and Blue, was struggling. It was a town without a draw. It lacked a Pokemon gym or anything else to attract tourists. Fuchsia had a Safari Zone, Pewter had a museum. Cinnabar had a famous laboratory. But all Lavender Town had was a massive graveyard that was free to visit. Its feeble Pokemart paled in comparison to Celadon's department store, which was easily accessible through the underground path to the west. Lavender Town was easily the poorest town in Kanto. One day, a businessman approached the mayor of Lavender Town with a proposition. Radio was a fed that had been taken nearby in the Johto region in a storm. He proposed the demolition of the Pokemon Tower and the construction of the radio tower in its place. It would be entirely funded by the man's business company, built at no cost to Lavender Town. The mayor realized this would greatly upset the residents. He also realized that it was an opportunity for prosperity. The town was desperate. He accepted, even though the condition came with the businessman's plan. Cubones are indigenous to Lavender Town. Their skulls were extremely valuable on the black market. The businessman's condition was that his organization would be able to hunt the Cubones. The profits from the skulls would be funded for the construction of the radio tower. Who is the businessman? Giovanni. The mayor of Lavender Town? Mr. Fuji. Red was simply a pawn in this plot. He rescued Mr. Fuji in order to deflect the growing suspicion of the involvement with Team Rocket. And as he left town and continued on his journey, Team Rocket quickly resumed the extermination of Cubones. The plan appears to be unconcerned with the souls of the resting Pokemon. It was anything but. Giovanni was a very superstitious man. The takeover of the Sylph Company was done, so that Team Rocket would be able to mass-produce Sylph Scopes, which would be distributed to grunts involved in the Lavender Project. He also believed in demolishing the tower would disrupt the spirits of the Pokemon inside, so he planned to construct a new tower. The bodies would be moved there before the demolition would take place. He knew the perfect place for the new tower: an empty hill in Vermilion. Giovanni hired a small independent construction company to build this tower, so that people will not suspect Team Rocket's involvement. The old man's company used a Pokemon labor force, Machops. The construction was problematic. It suffered through a string of increasingly bizarre disasters. The funds originally allocated to the company were lost in the bank robbery. There were inexplicable machine failures, as well as the death of several Machops. Months passed, and the project still stalled, making seemingly no progress. The citizens of Vermilion had no idea what the construction was intended for, joked that it was cursed. This would explain the continuing tragedy that befell on the Machops. Those attacks could not affect ghosts. Nonetheless, Giovanni refused to begin the construction of the radio tower until the bodies could be transferred to a new resting place. His greatest fear was disturbing the spirits. Some of his followers came to view him as delusional. He seemed to believe that the ghosts were trying to communicate with him, and that he had in fact disturbed the spirits already, causing their activity in Vermilion. His defeat at the hands of Red, a 10-year-old boy, validated his apprehensions, and he could no longer lead an organization that expected him to carry out a plan that now feared the consequences of. He relinquished his power and disappeared. The new leaders of Team Rocket shared few superstitions and apprehensions. The tower was demolished the next day. Strangely, the old man who owned the Vermilion Construction Company died the same day. The construction site upon the hill remains in Vermilion City today. It is abandoned, a flat patch of earth, barren, except for a few tombstones, under which the deceased Machops lay. The only feature that resembles on the planned Pokemon Tower that never was. People that visit it feel unease. Some claim to hear a faint, very sad melody. Most avoid this place, but occasionally, a traveler from Johto will unknowingly stumble upon it. They claim to see an old man in the Machop, continuously stomping the ground flat for an important construction project.
Come, little children, come with me. Safe and happy you will be. Away from home, now let us run. With Hypno you'll have so much fun. Oh, little children, please don't cry. Hypno wouldn't hurt to fly. Be free to frolic, free to play. Come with me to my cave to stay. Oh, little children, please don't squirm. These ropes I know will hold you firm. Now look to me, the pendant calls. Back and forth your eyelids fall. Oh, little children, you cannot leave. For you, your families will grieve. Mine's unraveling at the seams, allowing me to haunt their dreams. Do not wail and do not weep. It's time for you to go to sleep. Little children, you were not clever. Now you'll stay with me forever.
There are tons of stories about hacked Pokemon games. Some of them are really quite neat, such as the ones where you get a ghost for a starter. Some are ridiculous, silly stories about people dying after playing a game, or the game talking to them. God, don't these writers know that less is more when it comes to this stuff? Oh well, I digress. I grew interested in these hacked games that are apparently in any thrift store, on eBay, or handed out by some homeless person. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting these creepy people, and really found this particular cartridge in a trash bin when the garbage truck was brought by my neighbor's dumpster. I noticed the game and asked the trash man if I could take it, and he didn't seem to mind. It was thrown away after all. Of course, I checked with my neighbor to confirm, and they actually didn't want it, although they seemed perplexed as if they've never seen it in their life. Their son made a grab for it. A little boy saw the Charizard and went over crying out, "Pokemon! I want Mommy!" But his mother told him no, seeing as I found it. He didn't even have a Game Boy anyway. He just liked Pokemon. Thinking nothing more, I simply went home, looking at the cartridge's sticker on the way. Just a plain old red version, with the sticker slightly torn off the Charizard's neck, which was expected from such an old game. I had blue version as a kid, so I was eager to see what the, albeit minimal differences, the red version had. I was rather disappointed on what I saw. The screen showed up, strangled red version. Well, damn it, it was a hack. Hacks were neat and all, but they had zero monetary value. The originals were quite valuable by now. I wanted to play red, by the way, not this crap. Oh, it was free. I might as well try it. The game was as odd as ever. Strangled red? That made no sense. Not even in a morbid description of someone being asphyxiated as to turn blue while choking, not red. Who knows, maybe there was a pair of these hacks and I just got the red one. The more I thought about this, though, the more interested I became. My initial disappointment turned into curiosity. I wanted to know what the creator made, and I was going to note everything I saw. The first oddity I noticed was the start screen had a Charizard next to the trainer instead of a Charmander. Also, the Pokemon never cycled through like the original versions did. It just stayed Charizard. After 5 minutes of waiting, shrugging, I hit start. I noticed that there was no cry from the Charizard, as it was supposed to be. I saw that there was a continue option, so I'd figure I'd do what everyone did with games and see what the previous owner had done. No. I blinked in surprise. No? What do you mean, no? The game wouldn't let me no matter what I did, though the fourth attempt I heard the Charizard cry. Quiet and barely audible. But there. Shrugging it off, I decided to just hit new game. Like I should have done that after checking the old file out anyway. The screen cut to black for a while. No proof oak at the starting theme, just nothing at all. Eventually the screen came black, showing a bedroom, 2 beds, 2 TVs, and a computer in the corner. My trainer sprite was the usual one, consistent with the red version. I was curious to know why it didn't ask my name, though. That was answered as I opened the pause menu, noticing my trainer was named Steven. No, that isn't my real name or some stupid crap, like the game isn't self-aware or haunted, at least that I know of. It just had the name chosen already. Curious, he had the starter amount of money, no badges. He didn't look like Red, though. His hair was longer, almost reaching halfway down his back. Red's usual smile was replaced with a confident smirk. Honestly, I found the sprite much cooler than Red. Next, I checked out his Pokemon, a single Charmander, level 5, named Mickey. Nothing was odd about it, or should I say her, with the name and all. She had beginning Charmander stats, only knew Scratch and Tail Whip, basic stuff. The game seemed relatively normal. Returning to the game, I walked out of my room, noticing Steven's long hair was present on the back of my trainer's sprite when my back was turned to the camera. I didn't recognize the house, but I descended down the stairs to see more. Downstairs was another trainer, who spoke to me the instant I came down. Ready yet? Yeah. I assumed this Mike was my rival, pre-decided for me, a replacement of Blue. Most likely, though, I thought back to my bedroom having 2 beds, realizing they weren't just rivals, they were brothers. They talked about it back and forth, basic Pokemon dialogue, becoming the Pokemon Master, catch 'em all, stuff like that. Before having a little argument which is better, Charmander or Squirtle, which of course led to the introduction battle, like the one versus Blue in the lab. Simple enough, scratch, tackle, scratch, tackle, scratch, tackle, until I won purely of having the first turn. I took note of how much better Steven's sprite looked in combat than Red's. A different pose, his hair was looking better, blowing in the wind. A brief minor upgrade, but still much nicer. I left the house after some banter with my brother, stepping out into Pallet Town theme. Going to the east, I found that I was indeed in Pallet Town. The house was simply on the outskirts of the west. I noticed that there was no mysterious grassy field like the normal Pallet Town. Wondering about it, I decided to check in on Red's home. His mother was inside. When I talked to her, she commented on how handsome Steven looked, hoping her son would look up to him as a role model when he became a trainer himself next year. Which this led me to realize this took place a year before the original Pokemon. Red was even upstairs playing SNES in his room, commenting, and I'm gonna be the best when it's my turn. I was starting to like this hack. It was interesting. It was a completely new adventure, a different character. Hell, Steven even seemed to have some history with people in his town, a reputation, a personality beyond the silent protagonist. The people in town talked to him as a person, making conversation, not just spouting tutorial crap. Even Blue's sister had new dialogue. They seemed to be in a relationship too, as the dialogue ended with a kiss and heart over her head. Professor Oak simply wished me well, giving me a Pokedex to aid my adventure. He wasn't giving it to me to be the reason behind the adventure like every other Pokemon game out there. He gave it to me out of kindness, something to help me out, a gift. I was liking this more and more each second. The game seemed to have an actual story now. I was somebody, not just a cookie-cutter protagonist anyone could be. Not some blank sheet of paper that could be replaced without notice. The story was different, though the actual gameplay remained unchanged. I went north, like I was supposed to, went from town to town, collected badges, and received praise from the leaders. Steven's fame seemed to spread, as some NPCs would talk to him like he knew him. I used Mickey for every battle, and she was growing surprisingly fast. She handled Brock with ease, even pounded Misty with no trouble at all. She wasn't even adversely affected by super effective attacks as others did. She was a veritable powerhouse. She even became a Charizard at the mere level of 25. Not bad at all, I must say. Things started to get weird though as soon as I reached Lavender Town. I know, Lavender Town is the focus behind every creepy story of Pokemon base. But it was the only place that was noticeably different. There was no Team Rocket invasion, which I found odd, though I did remember this was a year in the past, so the invasion wouldn't occur until Red's time. I tried to enter the Pokemon Tower aiming to net a Ghastly, but that's when it got odd. Steven said, "I have no reason to be here." Steven couldn't walk into the Pokemon Tower no matter what I did. This was weird. I mean, hell, there are millions of places in Kanto. Do you really have no need to be? Little random houses with nothing but children NPCs, for example. Why was it there that Steven wouldn't enter? With a shrug, I figured I wouldn't need a Ghastly, seeing as Mickey could handle anything, so I simply went on my way, Lavender Town serving no purpose other than a passageway with a Poké Center. The game progressed normally. From there on, gyms fell and eventually I made my way to the Elite Four and defeated them. As with Blue, my brother, Mike was there before me, initiating the championship battle, and Mickey swept with ease. The aftermath of the battle was quite pleasant. None of the tension between Red and Blue. At the end of their match, the brothers congratulated each other with their progress and shook hands. Before the screen went white, no Hall of Fame or any credits. When the screen came back, it was at the house again. The two brothers were sitting at the computer conversing with each other. Steven said, "I don't want to." Mike just said, "Come on, I gotta borrow her for a second to finish the Pokedex. The entry won't register unless it recognizes me as a master just for a second." Steven says, "But she's my Mickey." Mike says, "I promise I'll give her back. Come on, please?" Yes or no? I was a bit perplexed, so I hit no to be cautious. Mike said, "Come on, please?" "No." I repeated again. "Mike, come on, please?" I realized this would simply continue in a loop until I hit yes. So I did, just to see what would happen. Mike said, "Alright, this will just take a sec, then we'll both be Pokemasters." Steven said nothing. The screen changed to the animation shown when two people trade Pokemon, which I found a bit weird seeing as I was solo, but whatever. This was apparently supposed to happen. Mickey went first. I watched lazily as it began to travel down the gaming red tube. Snap! That made me jump. The sudden noise resonating in my silent bedroom was loud due to the volume being way up. Looking at the screen, I noticed the game had seemed to freeze. Mickey's still in mid-trade, but the game wasn't doing anything. With a sigh, I just turned off the game, wondering where my last save was. When I turned the game back on, I stared at the moment at the start screen. There was no Charizard next to the trainer. Upon pressing start, the new game option was absent, leaving only continue. This was strange to say the least, so I selected it and started the game, staring at it without even showing my stats as usual. My jaw dropped with what I was greeted with. 1 year later. The Lavender Town theme came first, playing its normal way, the screen slowly fading in from blackness. Steven was in the Pokemon Tower, which made the music even stranger, seeing as the tower had its own theme. He was standing in front of a tombstone not doing anything. Wondering what I was doing, I pressed A. Steven said nothing. Confused, I tried realizing I was indeed in control at the moment. I brought up the pause menu and checked my party. Mickey was gone. Not just Mickey. All Pokemon were gone. He had nothing. The Pokedex was absent from the menu. It was empty. I was honestly concerned now. I checked his trainer card. He had no money, no badges. His playtime was 8,795, which was impossible because I only had 30 when I logged in before. But that wasn't the strangest part. The picture of the handsome, confident young trainer was different. His eyes were blank. His face was turned slightly down, and the smirk of his was gone, replaced by a lack of any expression. That long hair of his, before in a perfect perm, was now messy and upkept. I couldn't look at him anymore. Closing the menu, I wanted to move out of the tower, but with every step I took from the tombstone, the screen flickered like it was when a Pokemon was poisoned. Gulping, I brought up the trainer card again. His picture was getting worse. Every step I took, he hung his head more and more. His shoulders slumped. He bent over. By the time I had exited the tower, he was on his knees and hands. His face, his hair draped across him. I'd guessed already what was going on, but this clinched it. I began to put some things together in my mind. I'd always wondered why there was no champion in the original games besides your rival. Why is it you, the protagonist, had to beat your rival? He just waltzed in, no previous champion challenge. Then it struck me. The answer was right here. The previous champion gave up. His precious Mickey has apparently died, and with her, so died part of him. His Pokedex, the other Pokemon, his badges, his fame, all of it, he threw away. And that year, the year that I missed, the year where all those hours came from, I even did the math. There's 8,765 hours in a year. Add that to my 30 from before, and it matched up. Even so, the game kept going. This should have been an ending, I thought. I mean, what else is there to do? I had no Pokedex, no Pokemon, not anything. What was I supposed to be doing? I talked to everyone in town, but they all said similar things. Are you okay? Still mourning, I see. Everything will be alright. Please, is there anything I could do? Stephen never replied to them. They all simply said the same things over and over. I couldn't put the game down now. This was all so strange. Curious, I head off into Telegraphs, and eventually ran into a Rattata. No Pokemon was sent out, just Stephen sprayed. I was wondering how I'd battle. Wild Rattata left you be. The battle ended without anything happening. This was certainly interesting, and it happened with every Pokemon I encountered. Wild Pidgey ignored you. Wild Ponyta wandered off. The music never changed either. No matter where I went, Lavender Town came from the speakers, following me sometimes. It slowed down slightly sometimes too. I searched everywhere, every town. I talked to everybody, wondering just what the hell I needed to do. My frustration was mixing with the depressing atmosphere of all of this, making the experience altogether unnerving and uncomfortable. But I couldn't tear myself away. I was starting to get a bit angry though. Nobody telling me anything. Besides, giving me their, condolences and trying to give me lemonade or coffee. Which all Stephen replied with was, no. I slapped myself in idiocy, suddenly realizing how the likely answer was right in front of me. Pallet Town, of course. When I went there, though, which took me a long time having to walk, no Pokemon to fly, with no bicycle to ride, and Stephen only seemed to move half the regular movement speed. It wasn't much different. I tried talking to Professor Oak. These things happen. You just weren't unlucky. Next I tried Blue's sister. Please, don't leave home again. Red's mom wouldn't even talk to me at all. With nowhere else in mind to go, I walked to the west, finding the house from the beginning, which I had never entered since leaving Pallet Town. Inside was Mike, but talking to him was useless. He said, "I'm so sorry." I pondered for a moment. If this really was the ending, Stephen was doomed to do nothing but roamed Kanto in misery, haunted by the memories, forced to listen to everyone's concerns about him. As a last-ditch effort to do anything, I went to my bedroom and walked over to the bed. Steven said. I'm going to sleep. The screen faded to black for a moment, but then slowly faded back, the world having a black tint to it. Like Sprite laying in the other bed, I assumed this meant it was night. Steven said, I'm gonna do it. Do what again? I had no idea. I tried inspecting everything in the room. Nothing happened. As soon as I left the house, another dialogue. It can bring her back. It can do anything. What the hell was it? Something that could do anything? I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. Wondering about it, I tried to leave Palatown in the usual way. Not that way. You couldn't go any further. I tried the homes. Screw them. I quirked my eyebrow at that, forgetting the moment this was not a real Pokemon game. The vulgarity just took me off guard. I continued to look around, but there was nowhere I could go, until I accidentally stepped in the ocean. Steven walked right in, and the upper half of the sprite was visible, like the swimmers you encounter in Cerulean Gym. I didn't know he could swim. Steven said, Missing one? Missing one? I paused for a moment. No, he couldn't possibly mean that. I hadn't tried the missing no trick. But it just fit too well. That had to be what he meant. I surfed my way towards Cinnabar. I began to feel something was off. More so than this already was. Silence. The Lavender Town theme had stopped. There was no noise at all. Nor were there any Pokemon. I just kept going, finding Cinnabar, surfing up and down the east coast. Lo and behold. Wild Missing No appeared. Steven said, Mine. Wild Missing No was caught. What the hell? Steven didn't do anything. He just commanded the atrocity of broken data to join him. No. Become his possession. And it did. I was getting more and more disturbed by all this. Checking the start menu, I saw Missing No was not in my party, but instead an item, making things even stranger. I checked the trainer card as well. Steven has his back to me, his long hair draped down behind him, his hands in his pockets. Nothing else. Remembering what he said at the start of the night, I realized what I had to do. I surfed to the land and made my way northeast to Lavender Town. Along the way, I noticed the trainers oddly still out at this hour. I wouldn't look at Steven, all of them turning when he passed. Even those that were normally static. I tried talking to one of the officers in the guardhouse type buildings. Just go. They all had the same thing though. One sent chills down my spine. Sometimes, dead is best. My hands are sweating at this point. Steven was about to try the impossible. Something someone would see as a crime against nature, which many of these people shared that opinion. I steeled myself. It's just a game, and I was going to complete it. It took an eternity to reach Pokemon Tower, but I got there eventually. Taking a deep breath, I was heading toward the tombstone. I remember which one. The image of Steven standing there before it burned in my mind after all. First I tried inspecting it. Steven said, Mickey. Nothing happened. With a big gulp, I opened the menu and selected Missing No from the bag. Oak said, Steven, don't use it. I was reminded when Professor Oak would magically tell you that you can use a key item somewhere, like using a bicycle in a building. Though the message this time was different, even worse, and Steven responded to it. In a world that cheated me, why should I play fair? Steven used it. Steven obtained weird letters. It was... What in God's name did I obtain? I couldn't tell you, because the game took my control without my input. Stephen began to leave the tower on his own, walking every single step by step. The Lavender Town theme started again, as I left the tower and began his excruciatingly slow journey, against my will. Every time he crossed one of the borders, the music changed. It got progressively slower and more disturbing. By the time that he had reached Cerulean City, it was a demonic rumbling. I just started watching him, trying to guess where he was going, but it was getting more and more obvious. He was heading to Pallet Town. The music had all but stopped when he got there, playing a single note by single note. He went exactly where I'd guessed, right into his own house, inside and up the stairs. At this point, there was no music. Stephen moved up step by step, stopping at his brother's bed, turning to face him. At first, I thought the game had froze. He didn't do anything, simply stood there, and I couldn't move him. I did, however, find out I could open the pause menu. I was terrified to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I selected his trainer card. There was now a low growl noise, like a distorted Pokemon cry. Stephen was looking at me again directly at the screen, but he was hunched over, his bangs obscuring his face. His hair was wild and feathered out. Between his bangs there wasn't even a face at all. Just black, two red eyes looking straight forward, a white grin contrasting with the darkness. That wasn't all. His name was now S! 3v3n. I couldn't look away from my eyes. I was glued to this. Not breaking contact for some time, my vision was getting blurry until I couldn't see very well. My face grew wet. I was crying like a baby. There was nothing I could do but to hold back the tears. I was with this boy from the start. I built him up to greatness. And then forced to watch his decline after a tragic accident. And now he was this thing, this abomination. I watched him go insane, halting my tears, wiping my eyes. I closed out of the trainer card and tried to save the game. Just wanting to quit, the game informed me that this was impossible. Nothing can be saved now. The pause menu wouldn't close no matter what I did. There was no other option. I checked the bag and nothing happened. I checked the Pokemon, there was one. A single sprite that had 0 HP. Its status? Dead. Its name? Mickey. I selected it. It was greeted with 4 options. Status. It's her. Switch. Never. Close. No. Strangle? My fingers were shaking. I selected Strangle, and the menu closed, showing Stephen in the room again. Goodbye. Snap! The game shut off itself. I was dumbfounded, more than frightened, in a bit of a shock. I turned it back on, and the skeleton and the title screen showing the maniac, Stephen, and the horribly glitched Charizard. I pressed start to continue. All I saw was a zoomed view of Pallet Town, showing Stephen's home to the west, tall grass surrounding it, those unmovable stones blocking it from the rest of town. The image was completely static, no music, no movement, before fading to white. Going back to the title screen, it was as it had been when it first popped up. All I saw was a zoomed out view of Pallet Town, showing Stephen's home to the west, tall grass surrounding it, those unmovable stones blocking it from the rest of town. The image was completely static, no music, no movement, before fading to white and going back to the title screen. It was as it had been when it first popped up. A trainer the Charizard to hit. I attempted to hit continue. No.